details in case of a school shooting. We teach advanced firearms and trauma first aid skills. Graduates.
All right, good morning. You guys are listening to K-Talk Radio. This is the show Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki, and today we've got a very special guest, a friend of mine. Also, he's my attorney, but he's my friend first.
Friend first.
Yes. And you guys need to stay tuned because it's not often you get free legal advice. And over the next hour, Jeff is going to be sharing some great legal information. So what we're going to be going over today is talking about the ins and outs of real estate in general through the eyes of a seasoned real estate attorney who also happens to be a real estate investor, which is very cool because not every real estate attorney buys real estate. So it's always nice when you find someone on your power team who does what you do so they understand the game even better. We will also be discussing the top 3 questions my guest is asked by his clients. And as you know, if these are the top questions he's asked, they're probably good questions. We'll also be hearing about a nightmare story and the lesson you can learn from someone else's mistake. It's always fun to hear those nightmare stories as long as we're not the one who went through the nightmare. We'll also be discussing the step-by-step on structuring short-term rentals correctly, such as VRBO and Airbnb. That's become a super hot thing right now where lots of people are Airbnb-ing their basement, an extra room, they're generating extra income. And, we've got the ski season coming in, which is a great time to utilize VRBO and Airbnb here in Salt Lake to generate a little bit more income, which is great to help pay your mortgage, or if you're a renter, even to help pay your rent. Granted, your landlord is okay with that. Also, we will wrap up the show with some hot seat questions you'll want to listen in on, as this is your opportunity to hear some great legal advice. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest. His name is Jeff Brailio. Now, Jeff Brailio is an attorney. He's also a real estate investor. He is also a real estate investing educator. As an attorney, he practices asset protection for real estate investors as well as helps investors correctly structure and protect their investments. Mohammed in Houston. You guys should listen in on that because you both should be setting up some LLCs for your businesses, so pay attention. He has been an attorney since 1995 and an investor since 2000. He was also a real estate agent for 8 years and is currently an escrow officer. Jeff is the founder of REI Mastery University and is also a local and national speaker on legal issues of real estate investing, self-direction, asset protection, and corporate liability. Jeff is a board member and the attorney for the Salt Lake Real Estate Investors Association. Now, I sat on that board personally for 5 years, but that was probably 3 years ago, and maybe 4 years ago. Stepped off the board once I had my son.
Children seem to do that.
Children, yep, they start to take over your time. Jeff has created over 1,500 businesses and protection entities, worked with thousands of clients, and been part of over 4,000 real estate investment transactions. Jeff currently owns both residential and commercial real estate investment properties. I think the show's over now, right? We went through all of Jeff's bio. So, Jeff, I'm going to dive right into this. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here, Yoshi. It's always good to see you and always good to chat with you.
I agree. I love seeing you as well. I appreciate it.
We always have fun.
We definitely do. So if we could dive right into it, I love hearing all the guests that I've come in. I had Trevor Thompson from Equity Real Estate as a real estate agent. Yes, you know Trevor. We had Marcus Burton last week as a mortgage broker. And today we have a real estate attorney in you, Jeff Brailio.
Yeah,
and
you're hitting it hard.
Yes.
These guys are getting great content.
That's right. That's right. And it's always fun to hear what everyone's top 3 questions are that they get asked from their clients over and over and over again, because listeners out there who've never purchased a home might not know what questions to be asking. So if you don't mind sharing with me, what are the top 3 questions you are asked by your clients, and can share your thoughts on those questions?
Yeah, the first question I usually get is, how do I protect my assets? Because I deal with both residential and retail buyers of real estate, as well as real estate investors, that's a big question. And the answer is different depending on who I'm speaking with. So if I'm speaking with just a family that wants to pick up their first home, that they're going to raise their family in, that's a very different conversation than I'm going to have with a real estate investor who's picking up a portfolio of rental properties. So we'll kind of cover that from both sides since we've got both listeners today.
Yes.
On the family side, for just retail buyers buying a house they want to live in, there are some things that you can do to really protect your assets. So the first question you want to ask yourself is, what assets am I protecting?
Okay.
Is this a house, piece of real estate? And is that house my primary residence that I'm living in, or is it an income property? Am I trying to protect cash accounts, or are there stock brokerage accounts? Am I trying to protect these assets from potential liability, lawsuits, potential divorces? So there's a lot about asset protection that a good lawyer will follow up with questions to narrow down exactly what you want to protect and how you want to protect it. Most families, our first recommendation is always have a family living trust set up. This is an estate planning tool. It's sort of the basic document plan for almost all families, whether you're single or married, children or no children, and at any income level. The family living trust is an incredible document that helps control and allocate your assets after you pass away. It doesn't necessarily provide asset protection in the true sense of the way us asset protection attorneys talk about, but it is a good control mechanism, and it can protect the assets from crazy heirs or family members coming out of the woodwork to try and make claims on your estate or your house
Right.
when it was something that you didn't want. So having all these instructions put down in a living trust that dictates what you want to have happen to your assets will keep them controlled the way you want them controlled and not subject to courts or the state laws or anything like that. So for families, it all begins with the family living trust.
Okay.
Okay?
Great.
If you're a real estate investor picking up rental properties, then your primary line of defense is always the LLC, the limited liability company. This is the tried and true standard bearer of beginning asset protection for almost all real estate investors. Is they will have an LLC set up to hold and manage their rental properties. Provides great protection. There are some additional layers that we can add on for more protection if assets warrant it, but that's a little bit more of an advanced topic. So at the beginning levels, for retail buyers, family living trust. For real estate investors, the LLC.
Wonderful, wonderful. You know, a question I get asked from time to time is, what's the difference between a living trust and a will? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Both are instructions about what you want to have happen to your estate after you die. However, a will is nothing more than that. It's nothing more than written instructions left to others to tell them what you want to have happen. A will cannot own property, can't own anything, in fact, and it can't own banking and savings accounts or brokerage accounts or any other asset. It's just instructions. And if you pass away with a will, that will have to be probated by a court so that an administrator can be legally appointed to act on behalf of the estate. And that probate's going to probably run you anywhere between $1,000 and $2,000. So having a family living trust set up, it's a different kind of document, and it can actually own your house. It will take title and own your house. It can be the named beneficiary on checking and savings accounts and other kinds of brokerage accounts and other assets, so that when you pass away, those assets are owned by the trust, and whoever you named as the successor trustee immediately has access to those and can control those or liquidate those, whatever your instructions are. So a family living trust is the only way to avoid probate and having to go to court and having a public hearing about your estate and who's to be appointed administrator. It's also in these probates that other heirs or other people who think that they've got some claim on your money are going to come out of the woodwork and drive you nuts. And I'm in one right now this weekend. And I'm dealing with another attorney who's not terribly competent.
Okay.
And it just makes it frustrating. You know, the easiest thing in the world becomes highly complicated, and now they're going to spend thousands of dollars arguing over literally $500.
Oh my goodness.
And they just can't see the logic and the illogic in that. So
Wow.
the family living trust would avoid all of those headaches and hassles after you pass away and makes the allocation of your assets so much easier. And the family living trust also comes with other documents, such as the living will, which are instructions to your loved ones if you're ever in a coma or on life support and you have to discuss end of life decisions with doctors. So it's really a great set of documents that help people really plan for the future.
Very cool. You know, that reminds me when we set up, my wife and I, and when I say we, set up our family living trust, it was an interesting, that right there was an interesting question that we had to figure out. Like, my sister happens to be a nurse, so she has some medical background. And so we decided that if I was in a coma, my sister was going to be designated the obligation to decide if I should live or die.
To pull the plug or not.
Yeah, to pull the plug or not.
We call it the pull the plug document.
Yes, yes. My wife didn't want to do that. She's like,
Right.
I don't know, what if you could keep living and I pull the plug on you? And so my sister gets that daunting task. Hopefully I never am in a coma.
Yeah, and what the estate plan does is it forces you to look at those questions now.
Yes.
And have those discussions with family before it becomes an emotional burden.
Yes.
It's much easier to have that conversation when everything is good, and then when things turn south, then you've already made the decisions and people already know what's going on, and it makes it so much easier on your loved ones.
Absolutely. The other tricky one was, for those who are listening and haven't done this yet, this might be really, really important to you, is if my wife and I both passed away and my two children stayed alive for whatever reason, they were alive, they weren't part of the accident or anything like that, who gets to raise them from there on out, you know? And so that's a interesting, deep conversation that you'll have with your spouse, because
Absolutely.
who I think should raise my children if I'm not around and my wife's not around might not be the same as who's my sister. My wife thinks.
If you don't leave written instructions, you know, your in-laws and your spouse's in-laws are all going to be battling over who gets these kids, and the kids are going to suffer.
Yeah.
So advanced planning, there's your golden tip of the day. I've got like 5 more, so take 2.
Yes.
But that first one is plan in advance, plan for the future, and answer the tough questions now.
Wonderful, wonderful. So if somebody does have a living trust, is it necessary to have a will?
Not necessarily, but almost always when you do create the package of forms that come in most estate plan packages, the will comes along with it. It's called a pour-over will, and it sort of attaches to the family living trust. The family living trust can own things like houses, stocks, bonds, etc., and the will captures everything else. So it can dictate personal heirlooms, furniture, clothing, jewelry, like I want to leave my wedding ring to my daughter, these sort of things. That kind of all gets covered in the will.
Got it.
And so they work together as sort of joint documents, side-by-side companions.
Okay. Very cool. Well, that was a lot of information right there already, and we haven't even got to question number 2.
We knew we'd have fun today, yo.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. So what is the second most question that you are asked by your clients?
This one comes from real estate investors, and that's how do I protect my deal?
Okay.
You know, real estate investors are very aggressive at finding good deals, and that's their business model, it's their job. Just go out and find projects, find work. They don't make money if they don't find something.
Right.
So they're always hustling to find a deal, and once they get it, they want to be able to protect it to make sure if it's buying a house that they're going to be the ones that close on it, that's going to close successfully, that there's not going to have any ramifications come back later and bite them in the butt. And so in protecting deals in real estate investment transactions, it really comes down to the documents and understanding the documents and the terms that are in those documents.
Gotcha.
And that's where really an experienced real estate investment attorney comes in and can help real estate investors really get good, solid documents they can use. It's very common for investors to go online and buy, either get free stuff, or they show up at an event and get free stuff, or get something real cheap offline. Those are never sufficient.
Got it.
They just never are. A good experienced attorney will modify your documents to protect you, and things can change deal to deal.
Yeah.
And depending on who you're dealing with and what kind of deal it is. So really, and to a large degree, you can educate yourself and learn which documents go with which kind of deals to maximize your protection, or you can work with an attorney or a real estate coach and kind of get the same information.
Wonderful. For listeners out there, a transaction that's not kind of, I would say not a traditional transaction out there is a transaction typically called seller financed, and that happens for investors, and that also happens for retail buyers.
Absolutely. A lot of retail buyers are buying seller financed.
Yes, and in my experience, if those deals aren't protected with the proper language in the documentation, because they can be so creative, they can be they can be structured so creatively, that's where I've seen a lot of deals all of a sudden go south.
Absolutely.
And
if you're a retail buyer and you're considering buying a property with seller financing, which means you're not going to go out and get a conventional loan. The seller in some way is going to help you with the purchase price so that you don't have to go get a loan, and maybe you can't qualify, maybe you don't have the down, or you need to improve your credit score. if you're going to consider that, absolutely, without doubt, work with an attorney who is experienced in seller financing transactions. A lot of real estate agents go to a 1-hour CE course and think they know everything about seller financing. I've been in the business for over 20 years. I'm still learning new things about seller financing deals, and I will continue to learn. That's kind of the point of real estate investing. But there's a number of ways to seller finance a house. Some of them can cause a lot of problems, and that I really try and steer clients away from and into better structures and better ways of buying at seller finance that's much more protected for them.
Perfect. Wonderful. That's great. Basically, if you find yourself in a seller finance transaction, just call Jeff.
Call me, Jeff. Happy to help. Marketing plug.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Well, that leads us to the third and final top question that you're asked by your clients. Do you mind sharing what that is, please?
Yeah. How do I get started in real estate investing?
Awesome.
Big question. There's a real estate market boom right now, right? The market's hot. Things aren't staying on the market long, and a lot of new people are trying to jump into real estate investing. My first suggestion, and I think the best way to get started in real estate investing, is check out a local real estate investor association.
Awesome.
These are usually free or very low cost organizations that provide great education, great networking, where you can meet other investors and learn from people who are more experienced. I don't necessarily recommend jumping in and dropping $10, $20, $30, $40,000 on these programs before you even know that you want to be in real estate investing,
right,
or what kind of investing you want to do, or whether those programs will even help you. So start with local people and local associations, and get all the free or low cost information you can. Get some experience in real estate, and then if there's other programs work for you, great.
Yeah.
But there's cheap and easy ways to get great information, especially here in Utah. We're really lucky that there's some great RIAs, real estate investor associations here in town, where you can get great information and education.
That's awesome. I always say that real estate is like ice cream to me. If you go to Baskin Robbins, there's 31
Isn't everything
flavors.
like ice cream to you, Yoshi?
Yes, I really enjoy ice cream. And although I love ice cream, I could walk into Baskin Robbins, and that doesn't mean I love all 31 flavors. And real estate's the same, right? There's wholesaling, there's flipping, there's rentals.
There's being an agent, a property manager, being an appraiser,
Exactly. And so you've got to find, Jeff, that's some great advice, Jeff, that you don't want to pay $40,000 to go take a course on something that you don't even know what it tastes like yet.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And you might go,
That's a whole lot of money to pay for ice cream and then have it melt in your sink.
Yes, exactly. So start tasting the different flavors on a very economical budget.
Yeah.
And then once you find your favorite flavor, then you can
get deeper
more.
and invest more money and really learn that particular topic.
Absolutely. Awesome. Okay. A question I get asked a lot, and you kind of touched on this already. When I'm helping retail clients purchase a primary residence, they've watched a YouTube video, they've read a book or something, and so they ask me, do I need an LLC or a trust to hold my primary residence in? What's your take on that?
Yeah, for a primary residence, 99 times out of 100, it's going to be in a family living trust, or possibly a more protective type of trust, like an irrevocable trust, depending on the value of the house and how much you want to protect. But primary residences, and we'll talk about this later when we talk about the Airbnb stuff. One of the great things about home ownership right now is you can gain a lot of equity through appreciation, sell it, and capture all all that equity tax free. It's called the primary residence capital gains tax exemption, and every homeowner knows it and loves it.
Yep.
So you can buy a house, get the appreciation, sell it, and then all that money's tax free. You can go buy another house or go on vacation with it. And you want to maintain that. So you don't want to stick your primary residence into an LLC, because then the IRS is going to think, hey, wait a minute, this is a business or income property. It's not your primary residence, so maybe you're not going to qualify for that tax exemption, and you might lose it.
Got it.
And that's true even if you have renters in the basement. We'll talk about that in the later segment. But yeah, family living trust, primary residence, LLC rentals. Very simple.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. Well, guys, it's time for commercial break, but you're not going to want to step away, because when we come back, Jeff is going to share a nightmare story that he knows about and the lesson that you can learn from it. All right, we are back. You are listening to K-Talk Radio. It is Saturday morning. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki, and today we have my guest, Jeff Brailio, my friend, Jeff Brailio, real estate attorney. It's time for Nightmare Story. Jeff, these are always fun to hear because I like to listen. I want to learn from other people's
It's
lessons.
almost October. It's almost Halloween.
That's right.
We need lots of nightmare stories.
That's right. That's right. So can you please share with us the nightmare story that you prepared today?
Yeah, this is a story about an investor client who's a flipper. So flipping homes is buying a house that's in not great condition, renovating it, getting some, forcing some appreciation, increasing its value, and selling it for a profit. It's a business model. And so a client of mine who's a very experienced flipper here in town.
Awesome.
And he had a project and renovated it, flipped it, and then put it listed on the market to sell retail. So I'm going to take this example in the story from both the investor standpoint and the retail buyer standpoint. So I think this is a great story to tell.
Awesome.
So he sells the house, and so it's listed on the market, and the buyer's agent submits an offer, like is standard. And so my client then agrees to the offer, likes the price, but adds an addendum saying that the house is being sold as is, that the owners never lived in it because it was a flip project, it wasn't the residence, and that seller's disclosures would not be provided. Okay. Now, if you're an investor, this is huge nugget number 1 or 2, whatever we're on.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about why that was a mistake as an investor. Okay. And the reason it's common for investors to do that because they haven't lived in the house. They don't feel comfortable filling out the seller's disclosures because they really can't answer those questions honestly, whether there's ever been a water main break or a flooding in the basement or if the roof's ever leaked, because they just weren't there long enough.
Yeah.
And so they like to write in this house is being sold as is, no seller's disclosures, kind of buyer beware thing. So he put that in addendum, buyers signed it, and buyers bought the house. And then springtime came around, and the rain, and there was a small leak in the roof between sort of a kitchen and a back deck that was covered.
Okay.
And the buyer's mother decided to really investigate this. She was kind of a mama bear, protecting her daughter, first-time home buyer. So the mom physically gets up on the roof.
Oh, wow.
And she starts jumping up and down on the roof.
Oh.
And finds a soft spot and puts her foot through a soft spot.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, of course, she's now claiming that the whole roof is defective, that it wasn't repaired properly, and that the whole roof needs to be replaced. At $18,000, etc. And we're just like, well, you can go up on any roof, and if you stomp hard enough on it, you're going to put your foot through a roof board.
Right.
That's going to happen. That doesn't mean the roof is defective because you put your foot through it.
Right.
And so, we explained to them, and my client was, he's a great client, and he really is into providing great quality homes for people. And he's like, hey, we can come back and fix that hole, and we're happy to fix the hole for you. We're not replacing the whole roof.
Yeah.
You created that hole. That was not part of the house.
Yeah.
And the mother just kind of jumped in and took over the control and really aggravated the situation, which is what you're going to find a lot. Someone else is usually the instigator of the problem.
Right.
Then they hire a lawyer, and that takes a couple more weeks, and the lawyer makes, hey, well, maybe you should pay for this. I'm like, no, really, the mother got up the roof. We'd even sent our roofer out there. My client sent his roofer out there to take a look at it. And the mother was up on the roof at that time and refused to even allow him on the property.
Oh,
wouldn't even let a qualified roofer up there to investigate it.
Wow.
Their lawyer ended up dropping them because really they didn't have a case. And then we ended up in arbitration and settlement. And at the end, we initially offered $700 to repair the one thing that was probably a mistake and missed during the rehab. And,
Sure.
And my client really should have fixed it. And he was happy to fix it.
Yeah.
But he wasn't going to go replace a $17,000 roof because someone put their foot through it.
Right.
And in arbitration, they ended up with $700.
Wow.
So they didn't get anything more out of it. It took 2 or 3 months. Everyone was stressed and anxious.
Yeah.
They spent more money. My client had to spend a little bit more money in legal fees. And at the end of the day, they didn't get anything more out of it.
Right.
So here's the lesson. As a real estate investor, if you're doing a flip project, always provide seller's disclosures. Even if you can't answer the questions with full information. Just check no, or check, even write in. You can handwrite in, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know this, buyer to investigate.
Right.
Because what that does in the legal world is that it's called shifting the burden. So if you don't provide disclosures, then there's an argument that maybe you're hiding something. But if you disclose something that, even if you disclose, I don't know, now you force the buyer to investigate and make that determination of whether or not the basement's ever flooded or the roof's ever leaked, something like that. And Utah itself is a buyer beware state, just kind of FYI. Here in Utah, it's a very buyer beware state. Other states protect buyers, Utah protects sellers.
Got it.
And in rentals, Utah protects landlords, other states, they protect the renters. So provide seller disclosures. It'll go a long way in preventing lawsuits because it shifts the burden onto the buyer. And now if something does happen, then you've got a document saying, hey, I told you about it, and it's not my fault. You had the obligation to find out if there were any problems. So always provide seller disclosures if you're selling a flip project. And then if someone, here's the second tip.
Okay.
If someone does come back after you sell the property and saying, hey, we found a leaky faucet, or we found some cracked tile, these little things, and if you're a flipper, you're going to get this all the time. So the second buyers move into the house, they start finding all the itty little bitty problems, and they think that they were buying a brand new home and everything should be perfect.
Right.
Okay. So you have to make a decision. Are you willing to go back and do these little fixes or not? I'm totally fine with my clients, and I think most professional real estate investors will do this. Like if there's a leaky faucet or a broken tile or something they missed, they're happy to come back in and fix it. But if you do that, make sure you get a settlement agreement. And in that settlement agreement, it's going to say, yes, I agree to come back, fix the leaky faucet or the broken tile. I'm going to spend this much money, but at this point, you waive all other claims or lawsuits or damages or anything else about the house, and I am no longer responsible for anything else. Because once they move in, they can create problems. They can break things. And you're not going to come back 6 months later, 12 months later to fix all the things that they broke.
Right.
So that settlement agreement will sort of at least give them their peace of mind that these few little things are going to get fixed. And then it protects the investor from having to worry about the buyer coming back over and over and over again.
That is very, wow. That is fantastic stuff.
Okay, so there are the two tips for the investor. Now, the tips for the buyers, retail buyers. Because buying flip projects is a great thing because you're going to get close to a new home, a newly remodeled home in modern materials and architecture, and it's going to look great, but it's not a brand new home.
Right.
It's an existing home. It could be older. There could be older plumbing, older electrical, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Make sure you work with a really good real estate agent that understands the investor market as well, that understands flips and knows how to inspect flip projects as opposed to other kinds of retail properties. Understand that if you're a retail buyer, that Utah is a buyer beware state. So it really is on you, the buyer, to do the inspections. And if there's anything in the inspection that you're curious about, make sure you investigate it further. Hire a sub-professional in that, like an engineer, structural engineer, or concrete guy, or roofing guy, to come in and give an expert opinion on what the general inspector has already done.
Wonderful. I'm taking notes myself. I love the buyer to investigate. You know, myself, I flip homes, as you know.
Yeah.
You assist me.
I'd say we flipped homes together.
Yeah, we've actually partnered on flips. And, you know, filling out that seller's disclosure, there's a lot of the answers in there that I don't know because we owned the home for 3 months. We bought it, we renovated it.
You never know
later,
that if the basement's ever leaked in the last 10 years.
Exactly. And so, obviously, your advice, I've always done a seller's disclosure, and I simply write, I don't know if I don't know, if I don't know the answer, but I'm going to also write it now. I don't know, buyer to investigate.
Buyer to investigate.
I really like
buyer
that.
to confirm.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Really good stuff. You know, I had a rental portfolio in Kansas City, Missouri. I had about eight properties out there at one point. And when I started selling some of them, you know, I purchased those while living, I never lived in Kansas City. Right. It was just a market that I invested in. So I had never lived in them. I
probably never walked in it.
Yeah. Some of them I'd never even walked in, and so that seller's disclosure was really interesting because it was almost I don't know to everything.
Yeah. And be aware of investing outside your own state. Real estate law is very state specific. Mm-hmm. As I said, Utah is very buyer beware. Mm-hmm. Other states protect the buyers and really put the burden on the sellers to make sure everything is perfect.
Very cool.
So you must check local laws in the state in which you are buying.
Wonderful. Good advice. All right, guys, it's time for another commercial break. But when we get back, Jeff is going to share the step-by-step on how to correctly structure your short-term rentals like Airbnb and VRBOs. A lot of you guys out there are taking advantage of this new concept. Well, it's not brand new, but a newer concept on...
Say it's a hot topic.
Yeah, it's a hot topic where you can generate some income on your properties, a little bit higher income because you're charging nightly versus monthly.
Oh, yeah.
So stay tuned. We'll be back to talk about step-by-step structuring on nightly rentals. All right, guys, we are back. It's K-Talk Radio. It's Saturday morning. You're listening to the show Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki, and I have a very special guest, my friend and attorney Jeff Brayley today.
Hello, everyone. Again, for the third time.
Yes, yes. Well, Jeff, the VRBO Airbnb is a super hot topic.
Yes.
Lots of people are utilizing this strategy. I have friends that purchase duplex, live in one side, VRBO the other. The income from the VRBO way overpays their mortgage, and they cash flow like crazy, and then they go off and do it again and again and buy more properties. But there's obviously a correct way to structure these so that you're not finding yourself in hot water. Will you be able to share it with us, please?
Well, of course.
Awesome.
Why am I here?
Yeah, yeah.
The first, Airbnb, we first need to define sort of the difference between long-term rentals and short-term rentals.
Okay.
Long-term rentals are generally lease agreements in the at least multiple months or more. Typically, these are year leases, right? And these are your standard rental properties where somebody rents a house for a year on a year lease, or even 2, 3, 4 year leases. Okay.
Okay.
That is a very different investing technique or different income stream and than short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are nightly or weekly rentals, and they're more similar to hotels than a rental property.
Got it.
And they're pretty much governed under hotel law, not landlord-tenant law, although landlord-tenant laws still apply.
Got it.
So right now we're talking about short-term rentals. You know, if you want to pick up a rental property, get on a year lease and have your tenants in there for year after year, that's great.
Yep.
Different story.
Yep.
You can bring me back, and I'm happy to talk about those kinds of rentals.
Perfect.
But on nightly and short-term rentals, tip number one, the first thing you better do is you better check your local zoning ordinances. That's your local city ordinances, where your house is located. All cities have regulations about short-term rentals and even rental properties in general.
Got it.
But because of the rise in popularity of short-term rentals and everybody now renting out the spare bedroom, renting out their basement, renting out the mother-in-law apartment or accessory dwelling unit, or ADUs, that what they're called, and that you can make more money on a nightly rental than on a yearly rental, more and more people are jumping into the game.
Got it.
Right, it's a phenomenon happening across the U.S.
Yep.
And so cities everywhere are taking a very close look at this practice. Because what it does is it brings in a lot of nightly turnover of people into normally residential neighborhoods, and there could be, and it causes problems with neighbors. And most likely it's the neighbors that are going to complain and report you to the city. And if you're found to be in violation of city code, you're going to be fined, you'll have to shut it down and get the renters out, etc. Okay. Right now, most cities in Utah are allowing it. There are a few cities that are starting to regulate it. All city councils are looking at it, and I'm going to guess within the next 2 years you're probably going to see a lot of regulations crop up about short-term rentals and how to do appropriately. So you probably need to maybe bring me back in here.
Yeah.
Because it's an evolving set of laws right now.
Got it.
Okay? So first, check local laws to make sure that you can even do it, and you don't want to get in trouble with the city, because I guarantee your neighbors will report you.
Yes.
Okay. The second thing is, now if it's going to be sort of a spare bedroom or a basement of a house that you're also living in it, here are a couple of steps that you want to do. First, you want to notify your insurance agent that now part of your house is a rental. They're going to change your insurance policy from a homeowner's to a landlord's policy and get you additional coverage in case somebody slips and falls, one of your tenants. Okay. So tip number one, talk to your insurance agent, let them know what you're doing with your property.
Got it.
Secondly, and we'll cover this from both the investor and the retail side.
Okay.
Most investors and most people think that rent on a rental property is considered passive income, which in a true rental situation, that's true. So if you have a long-term lease, it's passive income. You hold that rental in LLC, like we said before.
Okay.
All the rent you get's passive. That's awesome. But a nightly rental is not. It's not passive income because it's not considered a rental. It's considered being in the business of a hotel. So it's your business. It is now an active or ordinary income business model that is taxed differently.
Got it.
So if you're a retail buyer and you're just renting it out, you're going to want a good lease agreement because you're going to have tenants in there. So a good lease agreement, good indemnification clauses and liability stuff. So work with a good lawyer to get a good lease agreement.
Okay.
Check with your insurance agent. Check with city city zoning laws. And then you can, just understand that the money you're making, you're going to have to claim, and you're going to be paying taxes on. You're going to pay higher taxes than just a regular rental property.
Gotcha.
And in some places, they're even requiring you to pay the hotel tax.
Ooh.
Right? Everyone knows that when you stay at a hotel, there's that hotel tax, that special hotel tax.
Yeah.
Yes, you may have to pay that as well.
Got it.
So work with a good CPA who understands short-term rentals to make sure you're paying all the appropriate taxes. Okay?
Wow.
Yeah.
Lots.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And that's just as the retail side. Now, if you're an investor, and this is an investment property, so you buy this rental, and instead of renting it out long term, you decide to go the short term route.
Okay.
Because cash flow is usually a lot higher and more profitable, so that's why investors are doing this.
Yep.
Because that money is different than a regular rental property, you're actually going to need two business entities to run the short term rental.
Interesting.
You're going to need the LLC to hold and own the property.
Okay.
That's your typical LLC that's holding all your other rentals. That's totally fine.
Got it.
But it's not managing the property like it's managing your other long-term rentals. It's only holding title and owning it.
Got it.
That LLC is then going to go under a property management agreement with another company that's actually going to manage and run the Airbnb and collect the rents and run that income through that entity to save money on the taxes, the higher tax rates that you're paying on short-term rentals.
Oh, wow.
And you do not want to put that rental property into the business entity side because that's bad for taxes.
Got it.
Okay. So here's a big tip for real estate investors that is very common.
Okay.
Is they will stick. There's two kinds of business entities. There's the LLC that they hold the rentals in, and then there's your business entity. This is like any other small business, okay? And it's taxed like a small business.
Okay.
You never want to put a long-term hold or long-term asset like a rental property into a small business entity structure.
Got it.
Okay, that's taxed like essentially an S corp,
Yes.
where the tax savings comes. Because then, if you ever had to move that property out, there's a sale of corporate asset tax.
Got it.
So even if you had to take that property out of that company to refinance it, and then put it right back in, that's a taxable event. Whereas if it's an LLC, it's not.
Gotcha.
So owning the short-term rental property, you own it in your rental LLC just like all your other rentals.
Right.
But the business side is run through another company. Because the income you make in short-term rentals is different than the income you make on long-term rentals.
Wow. Very good stuff. So, I mean, that's really important that just kind of reiterates the importance in my mind of having a relationship with your attorney. I know people that I'll talk about you, for instance, and they'll like, you talk to your, and they're like, you talk to your attorney, and I'm like, well, a lot. I talked to my attorney 3 years ago when he sent my LLC, and I've never heard from him since. And I'm like, what have you done in between? Like, I don't know, YouTube. They're getting their legal advice from YouTube, right?
The law school of Google.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, just to move a property, because that's something that I didn't know, just to move a property to take it out, so let's say you can get a loan on it, refinance on it, and then put it back. I mean,
if it's in the wrong kind of entity,
yes,
that's a taxable event.
Wow, that is intense. So yeah, very important to make sure that you guys are not only utilizing legal advice, but staying in touch with your attorney, as you do different maneuvers in your investing portfolio.
Yeah. And if you're sort of a retail buyer and you just want to dabble in maybe running out the basement, your legal fees will be very, very low. You can kind of get set up and learn how to do that, and you're great.
Yep.
If you're a real estate investor, it's about continuous education. You're always got to be learning. You've always got to be upping your game, always learning new things. Because really, every deal, every house, every project, they're all going to be different, and they're all going to present different issues.
Yep.
And experience matters. And those of us that have been in this for 20 years know those issues.
Right.
And those are the tips that I'm giving you today.
Yes.
After 20 years, here's what I've learned.
Right.
So why spend 20 years when you can go to someone who has more experience and just learn?
Exactly. And I learn a lot from you. Law is something I'm fascinated with. Sometimes I think I should have.
You would have made a great lawyer.
Well, thank you. I should have studied law and became an attorney.
Certainly better than the ones that I have to go up against.
Thank you. And so, because I like law, I read up on it. It's fascinating to me. It really makes my brain happy, ironically. But accounting, on the other hand, man, that's something that doesn't make my brain happy.
That doesn't make my brain happy.
and so I tend to not study up on that as much, and I have to say, thank goodness for my power team, right? My accountant.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
when there's things that I don't know, that I don't even know I don't know, then they're there to let me know.
Yeah, and that's their job.
Exactly. So somebody who's going to, again, let's take this back one step. So not the investor who's bought a portfolio of Airbnb properties. I've got a couple friends that literally, that's their model. They search houses that are zoned specifically for
that allow it,
and they purchase it. And it's actually really interesting. I've got a really good friend of mine who they purchased between him, his father-in-law, and another friend. The three of them own almost half of the condos in a building. And all three of them have made it so that they are on the HOA board because they want to make sure that the HOA never changes the rules on making it not an Airbnb. So they're on the board so they can control that law in that building to allow Airbnb. And they're like the specialty investor who specializes in this. But
right.
So you're saying somebody who just wants to rent out their basement, or okay, let's say they bought a duplex, they live in one side and they rent out the other, then they have a lot smaller legal kind of setup fee. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a duplex and you want to short-term rentals as opposed to renting out the other side long-term,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be some initial setup costs. Making sure you got good lease agreements, and that's really about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you kind of bring up a good point. Just another nugget.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy a condo,
yeah,
and your intent is to rent out part of it or all of it, make sure you check the HOA.
Right.
And unless you're working with an experienced real estate agent, they may not check into that because almost all condo buildings have restrictions on the number of units that can be turned into rentals.
Got it.
Or if any can be rentals at all. So you may buy a condo and then find out you can't rent it out.
Got it. Very good information. All right, well, it's time for another commercial break. You will not want to step away because when we come back, we are going to be asking Jeff some questions in general in regards to real estate and law. Mohammed? All right, we are back. You guys are listening to K-Talk Radio. It is Saturday morning. The show is called Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki, and today we have Jeff Braylio, my guest, who's been sharing tons of great legal advice. Legal advice isn't always cheap, so I hope you guys have been paying attention.
And $400 an hour.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys have definitely got some good value out of today's call or today's show. If by chance you've missed it and you want to listen to it again, you can check out K-Talk's website. It's there on a podcast. We also are filming this episode, which we will be putting these episodes on our social media so people can watch on our Facebook, our YouTube later. So, without further ado, let's dive into this. And actually, I've never done this before, but Houston and we got Houston and Mohammed in the room. I'd be curious to see if they have any questions. As young entrepreneurs, I've been sharing with Houston. I think it's a good idea. He's a videographer by trade, and I think it'd be a good idea that he consider setting up an LLC for his business, right? To save on tax benefits. And so he might have a question, he might not. We'll ask him here in a second. Mohammed might have a question as well. But I'm going to ask you a couple questions while these guys think of a question. Okay. So question number one. What is something every homeowner should do if they have not done already?
I'm going to give practical advice here.
Okay.
I would do, regardless of how long you've lived in the house, have a really good systems inspection.
Okay.
HVAC, plumbing, electrical, sewer main line, roof, foundation.
Okay.
and come up with a list. As real estate investors, we're very familiar with what's called deferred maintenance, right?
Yes.
It's part of our vocabulary.
Right.
But homeowners don't necessarily do that. So when a water heater goes out or a roof needs to be replaced, these are big expenses.
Yes.
$8,000, $10,000, $20,000 for you. And a lot of homeowners won't have the funds available for that when it crops up. And it's going to crop up in the middle of the summer, your AC is going to go out. Or in the middle of the winter, your heater is going to go out. Or in the middle of the rainy season, you're going to get a big hole in your roof, right?
Yes.
It's always going to come at the worst time.
Right.
Right? So if you have an idea of when these systems are going to expire or most likely need replacing, you can preempt that and get them replaced before they go out, not only at the wrong time, but you can talk to contractors in their off season, right? So
good advice.
Put in a new AC unit in the middle of winter.
Yep.
And you're going to get a much better deal. It's going to save you a lot of money. Okay?
Yep.
So work in off seasons, but you can't do that unless you know in advance what those repairs are going to be in the future.
Very great advice.
Yeah. So that's great. That's my practical tip for retail buyers.
Awesome.
Really understand your house and be prepared.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's check with Houston. Houston, Mohammed, do you mind handing Houston the mic?
All right. So, are there different types of LLCs, and what is the worst case scenario if you don't have one?
Great question.
Okay. For Houston, Houston's a small business owner.
Okay.
Right? He's
Yep.
engaged in self-employment. That means he owns his own business.
Yep.
Okay. So every small business owner should have an LLC or some business entity established. And there's two reasons why a small business owner sets up a business entity. The first, and the reason why most do it in the first place, because they're not thinking about liability or lawsuits, is taxes and saving money on taxes.
Right.
When you're self-employed, not only do you have income taxes, state and federal income taxes you're going to pay, but you also have what are called employment taxes. This is the FICA, Medicare, Social Security tax that you probably remember your employer paid half and the other half got deducted out of your paycheck in all those little boxes,
Yes.
right? Now that you're self-employed, you're the employer and the employee, and you pay the full 15.3%, and that's right off the top of your business income.
Right.
And then you pay your federal and state income taxes. That 50% can take a big chunk of your money you're making, especially if you're a new small business and your revenues aren't that high yet. That's a big deal. And so the properly formed entity that's taxed like an S-Corp, whether it's an LLC taxed like an S-Corp or a corporation that's taxed like an S-Corp, that can save you substantially to the tune of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in taxes every single year.
It's a lot of
So
money.
there's a great tax savings, right? The second reason, and as a lawyer, the more important reason,
Yeah.
is liability protection from the lawsuits that you might run in your business.
Right.
So if you're a landlord, your biggest risk is a slip and fall by a tenant.
Right.
A tenant falling down the stairs and breaking their neck and then wanting to sue you, or slipping on ice on the sidewalk.
Yep.
Okay? But every business owner does run liability. Things can go wrong, problems can happen, injuries can occur, and then someone's going to sue you.
Yeah.
Right? If you have a business entity set up, they're going to sue the business entity and not you.
Got it.
So, yeah, maybe your business is in trouble, but at least you, your personal residence, your personal savings account, etc., are all protected.
Wonderful.
So those are the two reasons why every small business owner should have a business entity set up: tax savings and liability protection.
Great, great. Houston, we can talk more about that later. Mohammed, do
Maybe
you have
we'll
a
do some
question?
trade, Houston.
Yes, yes. Mohammed does not have a question. Okay.
Mohammed's shy today.
Yes, he's very
He
shy.
got his hoodie on.
Awesome. All right. Well, Jeff, you have you are the founder of REI Mastery University. Can you tell the listeners about REI Mastery University?
Yeah, I started REI Mastery University. Well, we should rephrase that. It's REI Mastery U.
Okay.
The word university is a regulated word. I can't use it unless I want to be like the University of Utah.
Ah, gotcha.
But they can't regulate a letter.
Oh, there you go.
So I use the letter U.
Gotcha.
At REI Master U, what I learned after 20 years and going to a lot of real estate investing seminars and education stuff is there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of cheerleading, there's a lot of rags to riches story. I used to be poor, but then I got into real estate investing and now I'm rich and you can do it too, and all these great things like seller financing and wholesaling and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
People get really excited and then they go out there and they start doing these deals and they have no clue what they're doing.
Right.
No one's really taught them how to actually do the deal.
Right.
What documents do they need? How do they fill them out? What are the terms? What terms need to be in there to protect themselves, etc.
Yeah.
So no one really translates the fun stuff
Right.
about real estate into the nitty-gritty details. Nor do they really ever tell you the downsides, the issues that arise, and the problems that you might face that you can avoid. So what I've done is I've taken my 20 years experience, 4,000 transactions, and condensed it down into an educational model that covers sort of the protection aspects and the issues that you can avoid and how to avoid them in real estate investing. So we've got numerous programs starting at just $99 where new investors, seasoned investors can get great content on these really core basic issues of the contract, closings, seller financing, wholesaling, whatever it is, to understand and learn all of these things that 20 years have taken, that's taken me to learn.
Yeah.
I'm giving to you for pennies on the hour that I spent learning them. So that's what REI Mastery U is. It's a transactional real estate investing educational website. We've got online programs, live programs, and one-on-one consulting with me if you need extra help.
Very cool. Very valuable, guys. If you're thinking about getting involved in real estate investing, highly recommend checking that out. Guys, you have been listening to the show Utah Home Sweet Home. This is K-Talk Radio. If you want to get more information, you tuned in late, you can go to www.utahhomesweethome.com. You can also reach out to me at my telephone number, which is 801-810-4475. And you can email me at ys@utahhomesweethome.com. Jeff, can you tell everyone where they can get a hold of you?
Yep, you can call the office at 801-560-2180 or just go to www.reimasteryu, that's the letter U.com.
Wonderful, Jeff. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks,
Hope you
Yoshi.
guys enjoyed the show.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Very stimulating.
Good.
Intellectually stimulating. I actually thought of a question too, right? The S Corp. I've heard someone use that before. It's like another form of an LLC.
The S comes from subchapter S of the tax code.
Yes, subchapter. Okay.
Yes.
Because I've heard
So
it just one
it's
time.
the IRS tax code, and they created this subchapter S for small business owners to help. It's a tax break for small business owners, right?
Yeah.
And so a corporation or an LLC can elect to be taxed within this subchapter S. So that's where the S Corp or S elected LLC comes from. So we prefer setting up LLCs. It's just an easier business entity than a corporation.
Right.
Corporations have to have a board of directors, it has to have officers, it has to have shareholders.
Gotcha.
It's kind of a bigger mess. LLCs are super simple. You tell the IRS, just tax this LLC like an S Corp under subchapter S, and you get the tax savings.
Okay. Yeah, I just know that him and me would probably do LLCs, but like I remember Shaquille
Shaquille O'Neal? Yeah.
He was talking about how his tax guy would account as like S Corp for him, like his whole entity on all the stuff he has, and so I remember hearing it, and when you mentioned, I hadn't heard it in a while, so I thought
Yeah, it's essentially
Required.
the way almost all small businesses are taxed.
No, it's, like I said, I always tell Yoshi, I always learn a lot.